Now, when you came into play, was it the DXJ or what?
Actually, yeah, we were introduced by somebody else that we were working with at the time. We know this person mutually, and brought me over to DXJ's house, and that was kind of like the birthing of a collaboration for what is now become Bass Edit Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry, not the Bass Edit Miami. Welcome to the Planet Bass.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I guess prior to that, I was kind of just goofing off with with turntablism and just playing around with decks and little DJ, wannabe DJ, because I had picked up on like films like Beat Street and whatnot. So I was sucked in by that. So I wanted to be that guy, that musician guy that plays those records for the crowds, that gets the people moving, gets the people dancing.
Right.
So I was practicing and playing with my, in the bedroom and kind of getting my craft together. And I guess he recognized, whatever skills I had at the time. So he said, well, he invited me to a studio session, which was taking place. And I willfully, cooperated with that. I said, hey, this is great, golden opportunity, thank you, appreciate it. I walked in with the turntables, with the stack of records. I said, what do we do?
Yeah.
And I think most of it took place, was it like, it was all improvised? I never recall rehearsing for any of the stuff that
Actually, you heard the song at the house, but when, you know how I work, at least then, I kind of do the same thing now. I just sketch it out at home. Because I already know what it's going to...
Well, as far as the
basics.
The structure, the arrangement,
right.
The music. And
I don't obsess with it at the house. It's like, okay, here's the beat, here's the basic melody, this is, verse, chorus, whatever, bam.
The rest is improvised at the studio. Right.
Exactly.
And I felt that, I knew that, and I kind of just jumped into it. So, okay, great. So pulling out records one by one, scratch here, put this together, scratch this, scratch that, and next thing you know, it's like we have like patterns going on in the way like the cuts and the scratches were laid out in this record, which kind of, in a way, was, I don't know if it was cutting edge or broke any new ground, but it was unique to the way that we were just saying like sentences and we were saying things that made sense,
Piecing them together. Now, that's like, what influenced you guys at that time? Obviously, there was another bass generator going on in the streets, or what? Or you guys were the first ones, or how did that turn out to be?
It was...
Because you kind of said it, you knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, but this is you're coming forward a little bit here, and I think he'll recognize this. I told him, I said, basically, it seems like at the end of the day, people down here want to hear something that's like Planet Rock. It just at that particular time. It doesn't have to be exact, but the blueprint of the bottom part of the track is basically Planet Rock. And what you do with it from that point, is fine. But as long as you do that, the tempo, little bits of elements of it or whatever, and then from that point on, I think we took it and built it on because it,
Did we get that record out on the street right around the ADE record?
No. AD actually was a little bit before that.
Okay.
Yeah, but he was still doing, which all of us have made those kind of records that you play the TV theme. You play a TV theme.
Well, I'm talking about Bass Rock Express.
Bass Rock Express starts off with the Green Acres thing. It doesn't mean anything,
right.
but Oliver, whatever.
Because that was
right?
Everybody was using the.
Yeah, you had to put a cartoon.
When you had to do that.
Right, you had to do that.
We did the goofy stuff.
But again, at the end of the day, that's what it was.
Let's not talk about that right now.
But But were you guys stoned or anything like that at the time?
Well, no, we should have been.
Yeah.
With heavy rocks and boulders. Because that shit was like, what were we thinking?
What were you thinking?
No, but as far as like, you just saw the use of the samples.
It worked. It wasn't out of content because everybody else was doing it. So, we were just jumping on the bandwagon. Okay, this is a hot sound, this is a trendy thing, okay, use the themes and the melodies from, the 80s TV, and it's gonna work.
And then with the drop-ins though, like I said, when he brought the Star Wars record, because a lot of stuff, Luke and them were already doing that, but they were using the Dolomite records, and they were using all that stuff, which was all well and good. But I figured, okay, we got it. There's other spoken word things out there that we can use. And we can do it in a creative way. And if you notice, I really like the non sequiturs. I like to just throw something in there that's just, you know, totally off the base of whatever's going on at the moment in the song, you know, as far as those kind of cuts.
Now, back then, who helped you push these records? Let's bring some stories.
You had to have a promoter.
Okay, yeah. So,
Okay, well, you had to have a. Let's back up, because everybody nowadays is used to a street team,
Okay.
you know, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Back then, it was, I guess, a little more. It was simpler. If you did a record yourself, let's just talk about getting it out there. At number one, it was up to you, whatever. You know, if you were a performer, if you had connections, okay, you use those connections. If you wanted it on the radio and or in the distributors, which got it to the mom and pops, you had to hire a promotion person. Okay, there was a lot of them out there. We all know who they are. And we all have our opinions of them, good and bad and otherwise, but you had to have them. Okay, if you wanted to get on X radio stations, because they all had their own little specialties. Some of them had the ear of the program directors of the same stations. Some of them didn't. You know, so some of them they kind of cross paths. So if you wanted to start with South Florida as your base of operations, you had to get in contact with one of them. You just couldn't. Could you avoid it?
No, there's just too much politics.
Right.
Too much red tape.
At best, you could avoid it by putting something out there, making a big splash, and then they're all going to come to you. And then what's going to happen is if you decided to say, well, I'm going to do it myself, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Whether they're icing you out or not.
You had to have the dude who had the network of contacts on the inside, who could walk things in, who could sneak stuff under the table and miraculously make radio play happen. You know,
Maneuver.
I don't even know what that stuff is, but
it exists.
It's absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Prior to the bass era and
Yeah.
nowadays, you know.
Yeah, hey,
Absolutely.
look,
Without
prior
question.
to that,
Yeah.
which what I like to call the street music era,
Mm-hmm.
okay, which to me it all is street music, whether it's bass or not.
The FCC cannot control certain things, and that's one of the things.
Yeah,
It's just
and
can't control it.
it's
It's part of the business. End of story. At the end of the day, it takes
it's a
place.
different world now too. Though.
It takes place.
It's a different world. It probably happens on different levels, but the way when the ownership for stations changed, where large corporations own them now, it's a whole different. At the end of the day, you might want to say it's the same thing, you know, as far as who owns the venue, who owns sometimes part of the artist, who owns the venues where they play, owns the radio stations, owns the ticket companies. At the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing. It's only the corporations are the one in charge. But back then, you know, a street record was basically held, not held, but promoted the same way like anything you see, these movies about what happened in the 50s and the 60s and all that stuff, that way of doing business just came on down to the 80s. It was still in place, you know. There was no way that you could just go knock on the door of a program director and say, here, I'm a local artist.